Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we finish our Business Process Transformation Improving Talk series with our very own guest of honor, Rob Julasik. My name is Armando Lopez, and I'm a talent management specialist out of the Improving Mexico enterprise, and I am thrilled to welcome you today. And now, speaking of our guest, Rob has spent almost 30 years in the consulting industry striving to deliver business value for organizations ranging from startups to the Fortune 500. With a deep background in databases and web applications, he's a Microsoft certified solution developer that has focused most of the last decade working in the cloud. He lives in Chicago with his wife and teenage children, and in his limited spare time, he enjoys jazz, art, and football, while perpetually attempting to train for triathlon. How about that? I am thrilled to welcome him today with his webinar, Using Low No-Code AI to take knowledge management to the next level. And here's Lynn Barrett, my co-producing partner and friend from the Dallas office, to give you a little more information about our topic for today.
Thanks, Armando. I'm really happy to be with you today. Like you said, I'm Lynn Barrett. I'm one of the directors of consulting here at Improving. So knowledge management efforts have been collecting and cultivating valuable information for years, but the struggle has been to make this content easily accessible and digestible. With Copilot Studio, Microsoft provides a low or no code option that can dramatically speed up the process of using AI to deliver business value. Instead of browsing or searching large collections of KM content, users can now literally add questions and get answers from the organization's collective brain. Very cool, right? I know we use it and it is pretty amazing. So before we start, we encourage you to use our Q&A feature so you can ask questions, which we will be sending to Rob. Now to talk about this and much more, here's Rob. The microphone is yours, Rob.
All right, thank you. Well, I'm glad to be talking with you today. I've been around technology consulting for a long time and the Microsoft Cloud for the last decade. So I've seen a lot of innovation, but the potential in this area gets me particularly excited. I'm hoping that by the end of this hour, you'll feel the same way. First, I want to mention this talk is the anchor leg of the September series on business process transformation. In case you missed the earlier talks in these series, go to improving.com/thoughts/webinars for links to see the videos on YouTube. Lots of great insights and information. Now let's get started. Today, we're going to review how to use low-code AI to improve knowledge management using Copilot Studio. There's a lot to cover, and we'll pause to take questions along the way and have time for a discussion at the end. We start by looking at the knowledge management problem. Here we find that the more things change, the more they stay the same. As many of us know, collecting information is easy, sometimes too easy. My wife's a librarian. One of her jobs is collection development. They're always looking to add more books. Since the invention of paper, business and organizations have been keeping piles of files. Electronic file collections are the most modern incarnation. Once bounded by hard drive size, these are now virtually limitless in the cloud. In all three scenarios, we find that the hard part is finding what you need. Personally, I love wandering through a used bookstore or library to see what I can find. And as my family can attest, it can take a lot of time. The bigger the collection, the less efficient browsing will be. Navigating is definitely an improvement, but you need to know how things are organized. Signage on library shelves or on a file agreement can be pretty straightforward, but building good navigation for an internet can be hard. Things never seem to be where you think they should be. And finally, using a library card catalog was a skill that had to be taught in school. Modern tools like Microsoft Search and Google are far easier to use, but you still need to follow rules to get the results you're looking for. There has to be a better way. You may have guessed it, we can use AI to make things better. But like most things, it's a lot easier to say than it is to do. Let's take a look at how we can get to a practical solution. The problem is we're getting overloaded with AI these days. It's almost everywhere you look, and I bet you hear about it every day. So many new concepts and issues and complexity, it's hard to know where to start. The heart of all the hype is Microsoft. They have recalibrated almost their entire business around the mission of delivering on the potential of AI. Let's try to filter out the noise and focus on our solution for knowledge management. We start by looking at the 7 patterns of AI. We want to make it easier for humans to interact with our information, so we're going to focus on the pattern of conversation and human interaction. The first challenge with human interaction is to understand how to communicate. This is where generative AI and large language models come in. Essentially, the system is fed a huge array of samples. AI finds the patterns and determines a linguistic map that can use to both interpret what the user is saying and produce a response the user can understand. Under the hood in the Microsoft arena, this means using products from OpenAI, the organization that brought the world ChatGPT. This is still a pretty general approach. Let's get more specific about our needs. In the past, we would have called this a chatbot, but since we're in the Microsoft space, it's called a Copilot. More on that in a bit. The foundation for our new friend is the ability to communicate in our natural language. This will be much easier than any of our earlier options for finding what we need. We feed the Copilot the information we want it to know. Because it is artificial intelligence, it can at least appear to understand it. Technically, this makes our Copilot a RAG, a retrieval augmented generation device. When we're done, we can ask it questions about the information set and get answers based on what we told it to learn, ideally with links to get details on how they found their answers. Let's take a closer look at the term Copilot. Today with Microsoft, everything seems to be a Copilot. They went all in on AI with the goal of bringing it to the masses. But the marketing people needed a simple term, unique to Microsoft, that could easily describe what it was and how it was supposed to help. Hence, Copilot, which they define as a framework for building companion applications that make it easier to do your daily work. Now, while this unified approach is supposed to bring simplicity, it can lead to some confusion. There are all kinds of Copilots all over the place. There's 35 and counting. Bing and Edge, Copilots for Office, in collaboration tools like SharePoint, Teams, Viva Engage, and Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and Dataverse. There's Copilots for platforms and infrastructure like D365, Fabric, Azure DevOps, and GitHub. And then the granddaddy of them all, Copilot for Microsoft 365. But the big news is they're now letting us use this same framework to create our own Copilots with Copilot Studio. So for now, we'll just go with it and call our chatbot a Copilot. We'll have to keep in mind this term can be confusing to others. Let's learn more about Copilot Studio. In the past, you would have had to build our chatbot from scratch using Azure components in the Microsoft Bot framework. This required skilled developers and time. This is great if you have big needs and a big budget. The introduction of Power Virtual Agents attempted to make the process easier, aiming towards power users. There's still some complicated stuff, but it was progress towards a better story in terms of development and deployment. Copilot Studio is an enhanced and rebranded successor to Power Virtual Agents, the goal of making Copilot development more mainstream. The process is now firmly in the hands of power users with no deep technical skills required. The complex infrastructure to support AI, all behind the scenes. And we get controls for enabling access and managing the lifecycle. So why is this important? Solving problems these days with AI is cool, but the real challenge is maximizing ROI. Your best bet is to limit complexity, which lowers the investment needed to get your returns. So not everyone can justify a big budget for a big impact AI solution. A better approach is to use what I call lunch pail AI, simple, targeted, workman-like solutions that are smaller bites, making it easier to realize value. Microsoft already gave us some tools to do this, like Syntax, AI Builder for Power Platform, but Copilot Studio takes this to the next level. So now we have our tool, let's get back to the knowledge management problem. One of our longtime clients asked us for help with their corporate procedure collection. Their 100-year-old company developed a set of procedures over time they felt were essential to their continued success. The issue was getting people to use them. To get past the stack of 3-ring binders, commonly used as a doorstop, they scanned to create PDFs and stored them in SharePoint. This was better, but they were still having usability issues. We helped them develop an information architecture to help organize it, but it proved challenging to find a pattern that worked for all user types. This led us to the idea of a Copilot that all user groups could use to ask the collection in their own way. We built the Copilot and deployed it in Teams and on their SharePoint site with rave reviews. The client achieved the goal of getting people to use information. Shortly afterwards, we realized we could use this internally at improving as well. Our consultants work with a wide range of technologies and customers, developing knowledge over time that needs to be shared with the rest of the organization, letting everyone get the benefit of the collective brain to better serve our clients. Given our expertise, it made sense to eat our own dog food and use Microsoft 365 to build our knowledge management system, a growing collection of SharePoint sites that hold KM content and documents that are managed by curators for consumption by all. You'll see that one of the key concepts was organization. It had to be easy to navigate or search. Over time, as we added more nodes, this became more complicated, and we realized there has to be a better way. So, time for another serving of our own dog food. We'll use the Improving KM Copilot as the context for learning about how to use Copilot Studio. We want to build a virtual assistant that makes it easier to access our knowledge. We want to use natural language conversation to improve on old school browse, navigation, or search. Let's take a look at our high-level requirements. Rapid development. In keeping with the overall spirit of the Improving KM effort, we want to take advantage of existing components and out-of-the-box configuration instead of time and expense developing a custom code solution. This is for internal use only. The knowledge acquired by improving is our secret sauce, and we need to make sure this information is available to our employees to help them build solutions and inform clients just at their discretion. Only authenticated users will have access to our Copilot. They need to trust this information. The chatbot just can't run out to the wild, wild web and assemble what the outside world thinks is the answer. We need to get the curated information that our employees have assembled and reviewed over time. This is a layer of quality and detail beyond what you're going to get from Googling or using ChatGPT on its own. Got to show our work. Conversing with an assistant is a great starting point, but we need to be able to go look at the content to see if, on your own to see if there's more information available. And finally, we need to put it where people work, in Teams, on the CAM SharePoint sites, anywhere on our intranet, and let people use it out of the office, on their phone, at an airport. In short, make it as easy as possible for people to tap into our collective brain. The mission is clear. Let's get acquainted with Copilot Studio after we pause to take some questions.
Hi, Rob. Yeah, we do have one question. We were using bot framework earlier. How does that factor into Copilot Studio?
Yeah, a lot of things you had to do manually with bot framework are handled in Copilot Studio. You can integrate elements from your legacy bot using a skill, which is just one of the many ways to extend Copilot Studio.
I think that's it. Let's continue.
All right. All right, let's go. We're going to get started by accessing the Microsoft Copilot Studio in a browser. On the landing page, you'll see the option to try it for free or try a demo. Let's take a quick look at the demo. This takes us to a screen where they ask for a public website. I add the URL for the Improving website. The solution we want to build is for internal users, but this demo shows that external sources work just as well and that Copilots can deploy for public consumption. In under 30 seconds, we're ready to go with a Copilot fed by the Improving website. I first ask it about help for M365 Chicago, and I get a result. Then I ask about Atlanta, and it comes up with that info as well. What's interesting here is we list our locations in the footer of our website, not in the top-level navigation. Without a Copilot, you'd have to understand how we organize information to find it effectively. With the Copilot, I don't need to know this ahead of time. This is the most elaborate example, and it may not be that much better than a Google search, but it does give you an idea of how quick things can be and the fact that I did nothing in terms of background AI infrastructure or expertise. Let's go back and look at the start free trial option. They make it pretty easy to get started for free. We'll get into what things cost a little bit later. We log in with our tenant account, confirm some legalese, and we're off to the races. In the M365 Admin Center, we find that this trial is shown as the first of 1,000 units in their Copilot Studio viral trial program. They're clearly motivated to get people to use this product. Furthermore, some deeper investigation shows that you can easily extend that trial beyond 30 days. Once our trial form processes, we get sent to the Copilot Studio homepage. At the top, we see the ability to use a Copilot to build a Copilot. There's also options to start from a template or do it from scratch. At the bottom, we'll find integrated access to the documentation. Let's check out using a Copilot to build a Copilot. When we say Copilot was everywhere, we meant it. Here we tell Copilot Studio in plain language what we want to build. I entered, I would like to build a Copilot that helps me know what the weather will be in different US cities on different days over the next 2 weeks, so I know what to pack when I go on my business trips. It then asks for clarification, and I tell it I would like to know if I should pack a swimsuit. It doesn't know what that means, so I help it by saying it needs to be over 80 degrees Fahrenheit for me to want to swim outside. Along the way, it shows the plan for what it's going to build. I click create, and it builds the whole thing for me. It's a simple tool, but it worked without any modification. So not everything's going to be this easy, but it really shows the power of the concept. On to the template approach. There are a lot of templates that give you a head start on things that have proven to be common functionality. Each template comes with a set of instructions, and it's worth giving them a look before you get started. Armed with this knowledge, fill in the details, hit create, and get another add water and stir Copilot. The only modification I had to make to this one was to enable Copilot to access the user profiles so we could find the answers I was looking for. These are worth consideration, but for our project, it's going to be easier to start from scratch. To DIY it, we use the Copilot by a Copilot method, but then we use the skip to configure option. We fill in the start details, hit create, and the shell of our new DIY Copilot is ready to go. Take a quick pause for questions before we continue with the process.
Sure, we do have one. Is it true that you can use Copilot Studio to extend the Copilots Microsoft provides for their tools?
Yeah, absolutely. There's this capability. I proceed with caution because this tool set is still emerging, and you want to avoid collisions with enhancements to the Copilots that Microsoft is providing on its own.
Thank you, Rob.
All right. Let's dig in. Once our DIY Copilot is set up, we get sent to the Copilot overview page. The key things to work on are in the menu at the top, or in some cases in the body of the page. Note the test section on the right, which is turned on by default. This lets you work with your Copilot while you're building it. In the past, you had to deploy it somewhere and test it separately. Let's go add some knowledge. The top half of the Add Knowledge panel shows a lot of things we can use right now, but you can also see some interesting things like Dataverse and Microsoft Fabric coming soon. Imagine being able to get conversational with your enterprise data analytics infrastructure. Our Copilot's going to use our SharePoint sites. Right now, you can add up to 4. I expect that to grow over time. Now that we've fed our Copilot our curated internal content, we need to give it more information about how to converse with users. Topics are events that occur during a conversation, and we can control how these events are handled and how our Copilot reacts. There are several out-of-the-box system topics like conversation start, end, starting over, etc. And you can add your own topics or conversation turning points, as we'll see shortly. Clicking on a topic opens the design canvas that lets you visually configure what needs to happen. This will look very familiar to Power Automate users. Right now, we're going to modify how our Copilot behaves when we start a conversation. Out of the box, when the conversation started, the user is greeted and asked what they would like to know. We're going to add a couple of things to this process. Improving his offices across North America. We're going to ask the user to tell us where they're from. Now, while we're using this info to build our own usage analytics for this Copilot, we're going to give the user something back as well. We'll use the location they provided to give them a synopsis of their weather forecast for today. Then we'll get on to the original goal of helping them answer questions using the KM system. On the right, we see it in action. I tell it from Chicago and get my forecast in return. Behind the scenes, it runs a flow to track my usage info. Let's take a look at adding a new topic. With the KM system, we're always soliciting new ideas and suggestions for new content, and we want to enable our Copilot to handle these too. We're going to create the new suggestion topic. If we were not using generative AI, we would have to build our topic with trigger phrases like, I have an idea, or can I make a suggestion? This would be cumbersome, and you have to think of all the likely permutations. Since we're using generative AI, we can use the triggered by Copilot option and keep it simple, and let the LLM determine when someone's asking to make a suggestion. When we detect that a user wants to make a suggestion, we ask for a summary and then a follow-up question for more details. Once this is gathered, we trigger a workflow that adds it to our backlog list on SharePoint and post a chat to the KM Curators team, letting them know something new is suggested. When we're done, we'll thank the user for their input and then get back into the conversation in progress. On the right, we see it in action. The Copilot detected request to make a suggestion, gathered the info, and thanked the user. Under the covers, we use the flow to track the suggestion and notify. Let's take a closer look at that workflow. To incorporate a flow, we select call and action, and then create a flow, and then that opens Power Automate in a new tab. Once you've had a flow added, you can click on its name and action for the same result. On the Power Automate design canvas, we see 2 special steps. The one on the top handles being triggered by the Copilot. We'll make sure the action of the Copilot fills in the information we need for our workflow. The other is how we respond to Copilot. Here we craft a message that the Copilot can pass on to the user. In between, we have some of our traditional Power Automate steps, adding an item to SharePoint or posting a Teams chat. Let's go back to Copilot Studio and see about adding an action. Up until now, we've added actions to our topics to guide conversations, provide functionality. Since we're using generative AI, we can also set up actions that handle events that the Copilot will detect as the conversation proceeds. Similar to our handling suggestions earlier, we wanted to react if the user asked more about the weather after seeing the synopsis we gave them. For this one, we're going to use one of the existing actions, MSN weather, get forecast for today. First, we set the inputs using the location we gathered at the start of the conversation. And for simplicity, we'll preset imperial or Fahrenheit temperature units. We'll then elect to use all the actions outputs when we respond to the user. On the right, we see it in action. When the user says something like get full weather forecast for today, our Copilot triggers this action and we get a comprehensive forecast. A quick word about connections. With all these actions and workflows, we're bound to run into the need to specify connections so the Copilot has the authority to do its job. We'll see this when we're adding an action and a topic or defining a new action. We'll have two options when we're setting up connections. We can use the author of the Copilot or the user conversing with the Copilot. Using the author is often the easier experience for the user, but it's less secure. The user option is more secure, but it can lead to numerous prompts early in the conversation where they have to make their connections. Connection setting process is pretty smooth, and there are some SSO capabilities, but for each Copilot, we need to find the right balance of convenience versus security. Let's take a look at channels. Channels are destinations where our Copilot can be accessed. Each has their own specific setup process, some of them more complex than others. We'll plan to use Copilot in Teams and SharePoint, so we'll take a closer look at those options. When we select Teams, we're really in the process of setting up a Teams app. In the past, this involved a lot of manual effort and zip file transfers. In Copilot Studio, it's pretty straightforward. After selecting our availability options as available to all, we hit Create and Go. Navigating to the Teams Admin Center, we'll see that there is a new Teams app to approve. Once it's approved, it's ready to be added to Teams. In adding the Copilot to Teams, we have two options. We can put it on the left rail so it's available all the time, regardless of what the users are doing in Teams. We can also let this be a personal choice if it's in the left rail, or with our Teams app admin controls, set it up to be an app immediately visible to everyone. If we prefer more focused access to the Copilot, the other option is to add it to the chat function of the specific team channel. For this demo, we'll add it to the left rail and add it to the general channel of our KM Curators team. Let's see how we can add our Copilot to SharePoint. To add them out in SharePoint, we use the custom website option, and we're given pre-built HTML that can be embedded anywhere. Before we try to add it to SharePoint, the first task is to go to the HTML field security setting on the given site and add copilotstudio.microsoft.com as an enabled domain. Then we simply copy and paste this into embed web part on our SharePoint page. And when we're done, we'll have a Copilot sitting on the same site that provides our KM knowledge, another way of helping people where they work. Next up are the settings. For our Copilot that is using user-authenticated SharePoint sites, our most important setting is security and authentication. To make it work, we need to create an Azure app registration so that our Copilot will have the authority to use our SharePoint sites. Once defined, we use its details to configure our authentication. Let's take a quick look at other settings. Basic info like name and description were set up earlier in the creation process, and they can be modified here. We'll want to go to the generative AI section to make sure we're using generative AI. This is really an improvement over classic phrase triggers. We're going to stick with the medium content moderation setting. This can be adjusted later if we think the Copilot needs to be more creative with what it learned or more strict and precise with its answers. In the languages section, we see that the only language is English, but the list of available options should expand soon. In the entity section, we see the Dataverse entity we created to hold our office locations. We can just add another office in Winnipeg and want to make sure that they are included in our list. All right, enough setup. Let's get this Copilot published and into service. Publishing for use in our defined channels is actually pretty quick and easy. Click publish, about 15 seconds later, it's ready for use. Behind the scenes, it's wrapping up the entire Copilot into a Power Platform solution and deploying to the environment. We can pause a minute to take questions.
Sure. First of all, thanks for mentioning Winnipeg. We're really happy that they're part of the Improving family now. And a question about building the Copilot. Can I control the behavior of a Copilot at the topic level?
Yeah, in the list of topics, when you create a Copilot, you'll see several that are marked lesson 1, 2, 3, and these correspond with related articles on Microsoft Learn. I have these turned off to make sure they don't affect my Copilot performance, and you could delete them. The same process can be done with any of the topics. We can turn something on or off and publish those changes that take effect. So you could add a new feature, test it, turn it off, turn it back on, and be able to control how things work as people are using it.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Lots of good information in this section.
All right, we'll go take a look at all this live shortly, but there are a few other things to know about using Copilot Studio. We'll move the bottom line to the top of the list. Everyone wants to know, what is this going to cost? Anyone spend any time in Microsoft 365 knows that licensing clarity is a perpetual battle, mainly because they're trying to be competitive yet profitable while covering a wide range of customers and usage scenarios. So the good news, Copilot Studio is essentially free. You pay only for what you consume when users converse with the Copilots, and you get 1,000 messages a month for $200. Bad news, there's no real clarity on the cost of a higher volume of messages, and messages count differently in different scenarios. There are options to convert previous PVA license holders, and they're actively encouraging users to take the plunge on the $30 a user a month license for Microsoft 365 Copilot. As we mentioned earlier, the free trial will take you a long way and can be extended. For now, I'm prepared to hope for the best and start building Copilots, get a ton of value that makes the consumption cost, whatever they may be, easy to swallow. Stay tuned, the licensing policy is likely to change as the product matures. Let's take a look at environments and responsible AI. By default, Copilot uses the default environment. This is to enable putting Copilot development in the hands of everyday users motivated to bring AI into their world. But you can set up a separate environments to control exposure or target specific user communities. You have to be aware that everything related to Copilot must live in the same environment as that Copilot, workflows, actions, etc. Copilot Studio becomes pretty easy to create AI solutions. Microsoft wants us to keep in mind the principles of responsible AI. Let's not accidentally create Skynet. The top link goes to Microsoft's general stance on responsible AI, but the lower link contains information on how these principles specifically affect Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio also has some built-in analytics. On the Analytics tab, you get insights into how your Copilot is being used and performing over time. This can give some insight into ROI and highlight areas where some adjustment is needed. Everything we've gone through today is on the basic side, but there's a lot of advanced options for taking your Copilot to the next level. Just like the rest of the Power Platform, connectors are used to simplify integrations with other systems. This could be done to enable them as a new knowledge source or create a set of actions for a Copilot. The skill is the ability to do a series of automated tasks for users within a conversation. This is done through code with a bot framework. This is also a way to integrate any legacy bot framework functionality. Plugins are a more modern way of doing reusable code that can perform a specific task in a Copilot. Very similar to the Power Platform concept of the same name that's been used to extend Dynamics 365 CRM. One popular plugin is the Azure OpenAI Services plugin. This allows you to have your Copilot work with complex, custom-built AI functionality. Proving has several customers that are using this technique, letting the ease of Copilot Studio wrap their more sophisticated implementations. While plugins rely on asynchronous REST APIs, extensions enable the use of custom code for real-time interaction with other systems. And finally, the agent capability is coming soon. This lets one Copilot work with other Copilots so you can make a more modular experience. For example, a concierge Copilot figures out what you want and hands you off to one that's more specialized to continue the conversation. Well, with all this talk about capabilities, there have to be some limitations. Mainly, we have to remember this is an emerging product. Not quite traditional Microsoft 1.0, but it has some things to work on. You can only use English in the US region for now, but a list of 20 plus languages is in the works. These Copilots are using shared capacities. Sometimes they get throttled to meet demand. Generative AI is not always perfect. Conversations don't always go the way you might assume. The filtering for bad behavior still needs work. Sometimes they're too aggressive, we end up needing workarounds to get what we want. Right now, we're limited to 4 knowledge source URLs and individual files of 3 megabytes or lower. I expect both of these to increase soon. While the no-code topic design canvas is pretty good, it borrows a lot from the Power Automate design canvas, and it had its own issues. It can be a little finicky, you have to get used to the way it wants you to do things. Behind the scenes, it relies on the Power Platform solution infrastructure. There's still a few bumps in the road operationally. None of these are deal breakers, but something you might expect from a product so young. We'll pause to take a couple questions before we see some of this live.
All right, Rob, we do have a question. I see it says on there about US and English only. So what about the support? Where is that in the process for other languages, regions, and tenant levels.
Yeah, there was a list of 20 plus that were out there, but it seems to have been delayed a little bit. There's still some stuff that they're working with other regions and getting things into GCC or GCC high or DoD tenants. Like Fabric, this is getting a lot of emphasis right now. So I expect to hear a lot of announcements about this at Ignite in November.
All right, thank you.
All right, so let's take a look at some of this stuff live. So first, we're going to go take a look at a couple of the copilots that we built with no interaction whatsoever. This was one that was the one that I built for the what should I pack when I go on vacation or on my business trips, actually. In fact, I am in Vegas on 9/25. It came back and told me the forecast, and it said, hey, I should pack a swimsuit because it's over 80 degrees. Again, super simple, but I did nothing to make this work. That's when we see a lot of power out of that. If we go to the Copilot screen, we can see a couple other ones. At the top, you see this free trial expires today. And this is where I'm saying, yeah, the trial is over, but they're going to let you keep going. When you look at the pricing tab, the same information they've had before, no extra information yet. Stay tuned. Other copilots I did, this was 30 seconds worth of effort with absolutely no action on my part whatsoever. And there you go. And again, this was 30 seconds about this. So I'm going to start with USA, and then it goes and it's doing its thing. And here you see this test Copilot. What's really nice about this test panel is you can see things as you're going, you can restart, and it's just a great way to be able to test while you're developing. All right, let's get on to looking at our KM Copilot. We're going to shift a couple of gears. I'm going to walk through my script to make sure I don't miss any of the really cool details. So on this overview page, you're going to see the body. We've got this great little broadcast of the things that go do. I'm going to actually close this so we get a little bit more real estate. We see the name, the icon that's selected. We see our knowledge sources that we have right now and the topics that we're working with. This is good general information, but really we're going to work with our stuff across the top of the screen. All right, so we're going to start by going to topics. And here you see the topics that are out there. Some of these are system created or custom. These are the lesson ones that I turned off so they weren't in my Copilot. That's the example where I can say I want to turn off functionality. If I don't think it's working right, or if I want to make an adjustment, you can basically activate or deactivate and republish to see it take effect. All right, take a look at conversation start. Now, one of the things we're going to see as we go through here is all of this tooling is web-based and client-side code. You will see lag. You have to be patient, especially in the testing arena where you want a response immediately. It'll take a few seconds for things to work. All right, in conversation start, you see we ask our office question, and you see that we're using the values from our entity as the options we're going to present the user. And then when we're done, we take their response, and this is what I meant about finicky. I had to click this twice to then go see, and now I can pick what variable it's going to be. We create a variable to then collect the information from that. We go farther down, we see where we're going to hit go get our forecast. Oops. And if we look at the properties, very finicky, as I was saying. Look at our properties pane. And here you can see all the things that were used to set up the action for Microsoft, whether you can set a timeout, you can add some more things. Right now, this is using user authentication. In retrospect, I probably would have changed this to be author so that it was as smooth as possible. All right. So that was looking at the conversation start topic. Let's take a look at the one that we added. So we're going to go down to new suggestion. All right. So as we start, we see that this was triggered by Copilot. So I didn't have to produce the list of phrases for this. I let LLM decide when it's trying to collect a suggestion. And then as soon as it does, we say, hey, what's your suggestion? We collect that response. We make a follow-up question. They give me some more details. And then when we're done, we go call our flow, collect KM suggestion with all the information that we collected. And these inputs match the inputs for our flow. We're actually going to take a quick look at, you can click this to open the canvas. I'm going to just go right to our tab that shows it. And here you see a couple of things I'm going to point out. When you get to this, you'll see you get to the regular normal Power Automate. You'll click Edit. I mentioned the tooling hasn't quite caught up. This is a brand new product, and we're still not being able to use New Designer for this flow yet. So again, it's getting there, but there's still some rough edges to sand out. At the top, we see our special task that we have in a Power Automate flow that is collecting information. Now, right now, we set up the variables to go do it. Our Copilot goes and fills all these values in. We do something pretty basic where we add this to SharePoint. Pretty standard. We then make our Teams chat post. So we tell the curators when somebody's made a new suggestion. And finally, we wrap up with our special task that sends output back to our Copilot. In this case, make a pretty simple message to send it back, telling them, hey, we got your information. We told the curators, thank you for your suggestion. All right, let's go take a look at actions. And you see the one that we have is our MSN weather get forecast for today. And when we click on it, you'll see we set our inputs. And here we say, this is one of the things that's fun. Anyone who's worked with Power Automate knows that choice fields can be a bit of a challenge. And it was exactly the same in this interface as well. When I want to set the value of my global office location, this is a result of a choice field. I have to wrap it in this text function to get it to work. Here I set my imperial units. And then for outputs, I say, give me everything. We'll see this in action. I get my moon phase and my moon set and all kinds of very interesting information. You could very easily turn off the things that don't make sense for you. All right, moving across the top, we'll take a look at analytics. And here I've got this guy set, and it'll take a bit. You see Power BI worked into the experience. And very quickly, it's gonna work. And you get some information about how things are performing. Again, you can see your abandon rate, the resolution rate, and sort of understand how your Copilot's behaving. In there, you can find different ways, different reports beyond that to really get an idea of what's happening. And that's really cool because a lot of times you could deploy code and have no idea what it's doing. And this gives you some real insight. All right, moving across the top, we're going to go look at our channels. And on here, we went for Teams. I'm going to show that. I'm not going to affect any of this so that everything keeps working. But here you see that I'm connected. It's saying, do you want to disconnect from Teams? You can check your availability options and say, I don't want it for all, I want it for a group. We're going to keep it simple. When we did our SharePoint, we needed a custom website. And literally, we copy this. You can send it by email. This is where you can work on setting up single sign-on. I didn't take this one to that level, but right now, that's still a bit bumpy. I've seen it solved with SPFX, and they're still working through to get that to be nice. And then there's all these other places where you could drop this Copilot. You could drop this thing on Facebook. Now, remember, we're using just our internal, so we're not going to use any of these external services. But if you built a Copilot that says, hey, help me navigate the improving.com website, you could build it and put it in all these different places. All right, let's take a quick look at settings. And on settings, we're going to see, these are our basic information. We can change our name. We can change our icon. When we go to generative AI, we see that we're using generative. Now, you also will see this is in preview, so maturing tooling instead of classic. And right now, you see us taking this middle ground. And it's sort of an art to know, should you be more creative with the answers where it tries to think more on its own and use more of its general language skills, or no, I need to be precise. We're going middle of the road for right now. We mentioned security was the biggest one. And to get this to work, we want to do our authentication. And here it's funny because it says authenticate with Microsoft. This should be super easy. This is limited in the way it functions. To get this to work exactly the right way, we had to actually do manual authentication with the Azure app registration. I won't bore you with all that. There's a lot of complex things. When you're done, you get very precise numbers that you need to fill in, and that makes everything work. Working our way down, we go to our entities. And anyone who's worked in the Power Platform, These are the same types of entities. We created a brand new one called Office. And you see all of our locations. I did add Winnipeg. Should be in here somewhere. There you go. There's Winnipeg. And you can also do some cool stuff. I have it turned off right now where you can do the matching. So if somebody misspelled Toronto, it'll try to find the right one. Now, in our flow, we offer them the tiles that show these. So smart matching wasn't something that was really needed. We can look at our languages. Again, you can do all these languages, but now you can't do anything else yet. So this will change. I expect them, by the time Ignite comes around in November, you'll be able to do this in multiple different languages in different regions. All right, so we've done a lot with it. I preheated the demo so we could see it, but we're gonna go and do it live and see it happen. So we got welcomed. Let's say that I am from Chicago. Now, this is what I meant the lag. It will take a couple of seconds for it to come back and tell you stuff. In different interfaces, you'll see that timing. You'll see a little 3 dots or you'll see a little spinner, that kind of thing. Weather in Chicago is far better than Vegas, so 75 would have been great. Right now, we're looking at 102, I think. From here, we're going to ask it a quick question. Keep it simple. Now again, we wait for a little bit for it to respond. And we get a bunch of information. And if we look at it, we find that that actually came from our site. And we can prove that because it gave us our references. Here's the page that has the information on it that we went and used. So showing our work, being able to look at additional information. So you start with your Copilot, your assistant, and then you go find the details you need that are beyond just a regular conversation. All right. Let me keep going down my guy here. And actually, I was going to show that we went to, I actually want to show that in a second. Let's ask it another question. So, do I need a license? And it's going to try to ask some more stuff about it. Again, you got to wait a second for it to come through. And sure enough, it found a very particular thing that you don't need a separate license for Viva Engage. All right, so let's test our suggestions. Let's type properly. And I'm going to say, hey, can I get that whole forecast? Now, in a normal chatbot, it'd be like, I don't know what the heck a forecast is. But because we set up that specific topic and said, or that action saying, hey, when someone asks for it, I now got my moon set time, my moon rise, everything you ever want to know about your forecast. So that's sort of that action. I'm going to shoot the moon here. I had this fail when I was preheating the demo, but we're going to give it a shot. I feel confident. I have a suggestion. All right, let's see what happens. And what I found in testing, it said, oh, more license. Now it should ask for the follow-up. I had it not work 100% right when I did this earlier. It should say, oh, give me more detail, and then trigger our flow. As I said, with every live demo, something needs to go off. So that didn't work. All right, let's take a look at a couple other things. We saw our flow. We're gonna, the Teams admin center where we went and added this to Teams. Again, it went and made the Teams app for us. We didn't do any of the setup, any of the zip file moving around, all ready to go. You can control it here. You can make your different changes, all using that same infrastructure. That's sort of the key piece is you're using Teams infrastructure, Power Platform infrastructure. You're not having to do anything manual on your own. So we'll see that we have our guy in Teams. Here it is added to the left rail. Now I didn't make everybody do it. I added it myself. We'll see. test it live and see what happens. Every now and then things will go a bit wonky. And here you see, at least in this experience, you get the 3 dots while it's doing its thinking. That's a lot nicer than the test where you don't know that it's trying to do its thing. Hey, look at that. So that's working as the left rail app. When we go to Teams, I believe in our demo we were in KM Curators, but I think I found an issue and I now see it in our research channel. And sure enough, here we are. I started this guy a little bit earlier, but you see it operating that same way. So this is focused, or you can do the left rail. For our last trick, we'll show it in SharePoint. And here you'll see, and I kept this up so that you could see it. Because I don't have SSO dialed in for this yet, when I came to this page, it said, oh, I'd like to help you, you need to log in. Now this sounds complicated, but what's really cool about it is it's going to do a one-time passcode thing. So when I click this button, it actually launched this page, gave me this code, you copy it, paste that in as the next response, and your connection's made. Again, I will likely change this to be author security instead of user security, so it's a bit smoother, but here you see it does the same idea. So what did you pick from? I picked Chicago, I got my forecast, and it's working as we did before. We ask our question, we get our 3 dots, so it's not too bad. Come on, work. And there we go. We got our answer and we got our link to go see our reference. I'm going to go click this guy now. I'm opening a new tab so I don't blow up the demo. And here you see it going to our page that had this information that we had put in here before. Now this is pretty light, but the idea was just to show you how we're adding specific information that it's using to go do this. All right, and that is the end of our demo. Any questions about the stuff you've seen in the demo?
I think we do have one question. You show different areas where you can access it. So how do I access a Copilot created with Studio on my phone?
I'm sorry, can you say it one more time?
How do I access a Copilot created with Studio on my phone?
So this is pretty easy. It's using, when we set it up as a left rail app in Teams, it then is in the chat section of your Teams mobile app. You could also use other channels to surf on the phone, but and you could surface the SharePoint site if you wanted to. It just would be a lot smaller, but the chat function in the Teams mobile app works like a champ, and then you get that wherever you need it, in an airport, wherever you happen to be. All right, we're going to flip back to our presentation. Any other questions?
I think that's it for now.
All right, so moving on. Some final thoughts. I think we hit our mark. Our Copilot provides a great alternative to browse, navigate, search for our knowledge management system. Version we saw was built in an afternoon and respects our need for only serving authenticated users. It uses just our vetted KM content, providing links to appropriate items and answers that it gives. It's integrated with Teams and SharePoint. We put it where people work. This is a simple example of how to use this technology. I think it opens the doors to a lot of possibilities, all without writing one line of code. And all this was made possible by Copilot Studio. Value proposition is pretty clear. We can build very useful tools for our daily work without any special skills. We enable our small bites approach for using AI, and that modest investment makes that quick ROI achievable. It's a no-code solution, but there are pro-code ways to expand on what it can do. I've had this saying for the past few years, when Microsoft screws something up, they really screw it up. But when they do it right, it really is pretty special. And I would definitely put Copilot Studio into this category. So how can you get started using Copilot Studio? It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Go learn some more. I have links in here for the official documentation, which is after that, the product information. Next up, brainstorm for use cases. Just using this for knowledge, man, tip of the iceberg. I think as you see the way conversations can get structured, there's a lot of possibilities. Use the insights from this CAM solution. Find other things that you could do to make daily work better in your organization. Some might start from some of those templates. As you saw, building it from scratch is not very hard. And finally, start with that free trial. Take advantage of it, get some hands-on experience building Copilots different ways. with a Copilot from a template, and then understand those capabilities, how all the different things can come together to deliver a really cool user experience without a lot of work. And now we can take any remaining questions.
I think that's it, Rob. Certainly appreciate the talk today.
All right, so before I go, I want to make a quick plug for the October series on taking modern collaboration to the next level. Go to improving.com/thoughts-webinars for more information. And thanks for your time. Have a great rest of your day.
What a great session, Rob. I want to thank you all for joining us today, especially you, Rob Julasik, such a cool last name, for closing up this month's series with a bang. And as he said, coming up next week, we have some really exciting stuff for you. Join us for our 12-part webinar series, Tomorrow Technology Today. We will be starting with Devlin Lyles, President of Improving Houston and CCO at Improving, and the talk, How Technology is Holding Back Business Value. Until next time, everyone, have a great rest of your day.